Hey YouTube folks, and whoever links this thing. I've been looking into why there seems to be a concerted group of people that want to wear masks and be anonymous and want to trespass and do things like that, when it's the numbers of the people that is the most impressive and influential thing that you can have, and not people standing out or trying to make a point or get attention, despite how noble the cause. And I'll say that because there's a lot of people that say a lot of good things when the cameras do get there and they're doing something, but not many cameras get there when people are running around trying to evade store owners or whoever, or public, because the public is out there and they're not going to allow you to get away with the stuff that you did after the Stanley Cup riot, and that can turn dangerous. So let's read this. There's Pierre Elliott Trudeau with the carnation in his mouth. Vegetarian, probably, I think. Unleashing Canada's revolutionary potential. How we can find our Tahrir Square in such a geographically and culturally diverse land. And you'll remember my point about revolution and what that means to a lot of Canadians that fled countries that had violent revolutions that started peacefully and noble and turned into violent revolutions and crackdowns. They live here. They're about 30% probably, I would guess, maybe even higher than that, probably 40% if parents of the Chinese history pass that on to their kids. So let's read a little bit of this. Well, here's an audio version read by George Atherton.
Unleashing Canada's Revolutionary Potential by Stephen Hennigan. Every year, CBC Radio's Canada Reads competition urges Canadians to support one book.
I just want to tell you, that guy, to me, that sounds like a robot voice, which is just twisted. Sounds like one of the Macintosh Mac voices, but George Atherton, well, maybe they based it upon his voice. Anyways, back to the story, sorry.
List of 5 that Canadians should read. 5 celebrities debate the book's merits, deciding which ones are to be voted off the island until a single title remains. Canada Reads may be our culture's closest approximation to a functional democratic institution. The initial Canada Reads in 2001 was won by Michael Ondaatje. As election theorists insist, though, it's the second pre-vote that reveals a country's true inclinations. Accordingly, the second Canada Reads competition in 2002 chose Next Episode, sometimes known by its original French title Prochain Épisode, by Hubert Aquin, an erudite self-destructive Quebec revolutionary of the 1960s. Most Anglo-Canadian readers hadn't heard of this novel prior to its inclusion on a national radio show. Cuba is sinking in flames in the middle of Lac Léman while I descend to the bottom of things, runs the opening sentence. Who would imagine that the first work of the book Canadians should read would be the name of the country that is home to the hemisphere's only enduring socialist revolution? Or that July 26th, the date of Fidel Castro's assault on the Moncada barracks in Santiago, Cuba, would recur in the pages of an emblematic Canadian novel like a secret key to our being. A New Jersey union organizer once told me that American bosses were afraid of Canada because they didn't understand how things worked up there. You never know, he said. Some crazy lefty might take over. I shook my head. Like most people, I assumed that thousands take to the streets was a headline to be expected only after a rowdy Stanley Cup hockey celebration. Yet the G20 protests in Toronto on June 26th and 27th, 2010, proved that the potential for anger to swell into insurrection was alive in the Canadian psyche. The more than 900 arrests that took place in those 2 days, many of them peaceful placard wavers or unsuspecting pedestrians, also offered a hint of why revolutions don't happen here. Canada is very heavily policed. Our founding document, the British North America Act, vaunts peace, order, and good government, in contrast to the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness claimed by the republic south of the border. A mainstay of our national mythology is that there was no Wild West in 19th century Canada, no Billy the Kids toting six-shooters, because the Northwest Mounted Police arrived first. Only after the forerunners of today's Mounties had secured order were rank-and-file settlers allowed to move on to the prairies. That policy is the ancestor of the vacant, locked-down Toronto of 2010, where streets and buildings of no particular strategic importance were put off-limits to the public, and the reason why Toronto Police Chief Bill Blair repeatedly denounced peaceful protest as being complicit with the criminal conspiracy. In the context of Prime Minister Stephen Harper's project of converting Canada into a night watchman state in which the military, police, and prisons are expanded, while all other branches of government shrivel, it is vital to ask, are Canadians complacent by nature, or are they repressed by a state whose mantra of order has been internalized by its citizens? I spent the summer of 2010 in Cairo, Egypt. The moment my taxi swung out of the airport, the driver pointed out the white uniformed police officers who stood on nearly every street corner. My friends and I couldn't figure Cairo out. A metropolitan city of more than 19 million people, the vast majority of them living in ugly poverty, where it was safe to walk the streets at 3 a.m., my experience in large Latin American cities where glaring divides between rich and poor bred violent street crime told me that this shouldn't be possible.